Hi guys, welcome back to the Spurred On podcast, and today's episode is called the Conor Gallagher Conundrum. This is a rumour that just will not go away, and with kind of halfway through the transfer window gone, it doesn't really look like Spurs are seriously thinking about going anywhere else in terms of positions on the pitch, by which I mean we're looking for a midfielder, and I think we're looking for a midfielder that can ideally play in the 6, the 8, or the kind of 8/10 role, and that keeps us coming back to Conor Gallagher. Of course, in any other time, the idea of signing Chelsea's captain, or at least the player who's been playing as Chelsea's captain this season due to injuries and bad form, etc., would be out of the question. Under their previous ownership, Roman Abramovich, he steadfastly refused to sell players to Tottenham Hotspur. In fact, I think the last player that moved to Tottenham was Carlo Cudicini, and that was on a free transfer, and therefore it doesn't really count as a proper signing. Back in the day when I was a kid, we used to sign players from Chelsea. I remember Gordon Jury, for instance, was a great player and we got him from Chelsea. But in the past 20 years or so, it is an absolute no-go. But right now, the idea of Conor Gallagher leaving Chelsea and joining Spurs is boiling the blood of Chelsea fans. I'm going to talk a bit more about that as we go through the episode. But for me, the fact that it won't go away, the fact that his agent clearly hasn't said to Tottenham Hotspur, we wouldn't come to you. And the fact that his agent hasn't said to Chelsea, I'm going to sign a new deal, we're going to sign a new deal. He's got 18 months left of his deal. And of course, the reason why this is an option is because of financial fair play. PSR, profit and sustainability rules, which means that if Chelsea can offload a homegrown player from their books, then they get that money in full. It doesn't have to be accounted for over the length of the contract as it would do with a foreign player. So they are looking at potentially selling Conor Gallagher, even though he's a complete fan favourite, even though he's played pretty much all of their games this season with the armband on. And that has interested Big Ange Postecoglou and his recruitment team. So let's go into some stats about Conor Gallagher. 23 years old. On Transfer Market, he's rated at 42 million euros. That is such a low fee for a player who has played 11 times for England. He's homegrown. 42 million euros. English club to English club tax, English player tax, homegrown tax. If Tottenham were to be able to get him for between 40 and 50 million pounds, that would be an unbelievable amount. He's played 71 times for Chelsea. Of course, he's been on a few loans as well. A Premier League loan at Crystal Palace where he made 39 starts. He also played 32 times for West Brom and 26 times for Charlton. He scored 13 Premier League goals and had 10 assists. So that's 23 goal involvements from midfield in we're talking about 71 appearances, so just over 100 appearances for a midfielder. That's really excellent. He's also played 8 times in the Champions League and, as I mentioned, has made 11 appearances for England. So we're talking about a player who clearly has pedigree. Let's see what all the people that he's played under have said about him, the managers. First of all, let's go for Mauricio Pochettino. He has said about Conor Gallagher, you can see on the pitch, he runs, he plays, he fights. He gives everything to try to win. He is a really important player, a type of player every coaching staff wants to have in his team. That interests me because Big Ange Postecoglou has come out over and over again and said that he will choose players who maybe aren't quite as top-level talented technically, not totally elite technically, or in terms of their gifts, but players who will work. He has said that he deems the difference between those elite players and the ones who are willing to kind of work 110% all the time, but maybe are just not, the level below that top level as negligible. And he wants a squad full of those types of players. And for me, that is why Conor Gallagher is still being talked about as a potential Spurs signing. Because everybody who he has played under and everybody who he plays with talks about what an elite trier and motivator and how much desire he has. Okay, let's move on. Gareth Southgate, the England manager. Now, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. A lot of people don't rate Gareth Southgate. I'm actually not one of them. I think the England job not only is a poison chalice, but it's 95% politics. It's 95% politics, kind of 3% man management, 1% how you enable players to feel comfortable around the group, and then another kind of couple of percent when you get to the big tournaments? How do you keep the players interested? How do you keep the players who aren't in the first team not kind of kicking up a fuss? How do you keep the players from being bored when they're a month away from their home, their families, stuff like that? Anyway, so I'm not saying that everyone loves Gareth Southgate, but I think he's done a good job as England manager, and I do rate what he says. He's a smart, clever bloke. He says about Conor Gallagher, his journey is really interesting because with some of our players who've come into the squad young, their talent has been obvious and you would probably have picked them up at 15, 16 or 17. But Conor is perhaps a slower burner in terms of how external people might have viewed him. He has got tremendous drive. This week is a classic for me. He's come with a bit of a knock from the weekend, but he walked through the door saying, "It is a bit sore, but I will be fine for Friday." There was no way he was going home. There was no way he wasn't going to give himself every chance. He wasn't able to train for the first few days, but he was determined he would be available, and that, in a nutshell, is what is going to be one of his greatest strengths, which will allow himself to achieve everything he might in the game. His mentality is outstanding. So yet again, the pattern, mentality, desire, drive, his want to play whenever he can, whether he's got a knock or not. How many players down the years have been picked for an England match, an England friendly, got a tiny little knock, maybe even made up that they've got a tiny knock because they don't want to go? Conor Gallagher, the direct opposite. He wants to play at every opportunity. He wants to show how good he is. He wants to show his talent. And he doesn't want anyone to think of him as somebody who will, leave an opportunity just because he's got a knock. I love that. And that is exactly what Big Ange wants. I'm sure of it. He talks about it. That's why. Frank Lampard, again, another manager who, not everybody rates, but managed Chelsea. And the first time he managed Chelsea, he had no transfers. He wasn't allowed transfers because of financial fair play. So he's the one who blooded all these young players. He's the reason Mason Mount has played so many times for England. He's the reason Tomori got a move to Milan. He's the reason Conor Gallagher got his chance at Chelsea. Without that, I don't think those young players would have come through Chelsea, and Chelsea wouldn't have made as much money. So we wouldn't be talking about it. So it's worth listening to what Frank Lampard said about Conor Gallagher. He is an amazing character and big talent scoring goals from midfield. As a manager, you see things that those on the outside of the club don't. And when you talk about players wanting to train at a level every day, sometimes you pick a team and people say, "Why do you keep playing Conor Gallagher?" The answer, because of his desire to play for the club. Desire to raise standards and train hard. When I went back to the club, he trained every day like he really wanted to show something. So there we go again. Once again. An elite ex-England midfielder who scored goals from midfield talking about a player he sees with a similar kind of desire and ability that he had. Frank Lampard wasn't the most gifted player of all time, as Conor Gallagher isn't. But desire takes you over that limit, makes you a better player than you think. Finally, well, not finally, but in terms of this period of seeing what Chelsea people think, the kind of face of Chelsea influencing, the face of Chelsea YouTube, Rory Jennings. In a video entitled, "Why Chelsea Will Regret Selling Conor Gallagher," Rory said this: "I have the fear that Chelsea are going to allow one of our best players this season to leave the club. I think it would be a travesty, and I desperately hope that it doesn't happen." He goes on to say, "What does it say about our club if we allow Conor Gallagher to leave? It will just break my heart." Well, in answer to that, what it says about your club is that you've made some horrible decisions over the past couple of years. And not only that, but before that, you were run by a criminal and all of your success is down to criminality. But now you've tried to go about it a different way under Todd Boehly and you made some terrible decisions financially, and now you are reaping the negatives from it. Rory went on to say this: "He's become our most important midfielder. When you think there are two players that are worth £250 million, by which he means Enzo Fernandez and Moise Caicedo, and the most important, I'm not saying he's the most technically advanced or the best footballer overall, although I could easily make that argument as well, but he's the homegrown player. He's more important to us at the moment than Fernandez and Caicedo." The last thing Rory wants to talk about, trust me, is how good Conor Gallagher is if they're about to lose him, but he can't stop himself. He really rates him. And he doesn't even mention Tottenham as a club, but Tottenham are the one club at the moment able to spend money in this transfer window because of financial fair play, because of profit and sustainability rules, and because of the way Daniel Levy has moved the club forward by investing in infrastructure and getting money in through the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So, that's what they've had to say. What are the benefits of us signing Conor Gallagher? He's an elite presser. He's an unbelievable finisher. He can play in all three midfield roles that Ange plays. The 6, the 8, or the 8/10 role. He would be another big Ange signing, by which I mean Ange has been incredible so far at only signing off transfers where the players have the exact attributes that he needs for his team. Also, a huge benefit, taking a player from a rival who they don't want to lose. Remember the Sol Campbell effect. How devastating it was as a Spurs fan losing our captain to one of our rivals, to our biggest rival. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. It's a great price. 40 to 50 million pounds would be an unbelievable price. And signing a player like Conor Gallagher would help to drive Tottenham to the next level. Not just on the pitch, not just in terms of the players that Ange needs to play his style of football, but in terms of showing other players what we're building. Signing someone like Conor Gallagher would allow other players to look at Spurs and say, I want a piece of that. So, what do I think the chances are? At the moment, I'm going to be realistic. I'm going to say 6.5, 7 out of 10. The chances of this happening. It won't go away though. There's something in it, I'm sure of it. And if it's going to happen at the end of this transfer window when Daniel Levy will get in there in the last week and go over to Todd Boehly and say, if you need money to spend on longer term purchases, bigger foreign signings, we'll give you £45 million now. I think it's really fascinating. Guys, let me know what you think of Conor Gallagher in the comments below. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Please do become a Spurred On Pro member for perks. Guaranteed comment replies from me, members only videos and Q&As with me, and many more perks. Please do press subscribe and also go over to the podcast platforms. Give me a follow and a subscribe. Thank you so much for your support. Speak to you again soon. Come on, you Spurs.